You are listening to the audio portion of the QB Power Hour webinar series. The QB Power Hour is a free biweekly webinar series for accounting professionals presented by Nichole Long and Dan DeLong, who are very passionate about the industry, QuickBooks, and apps that integrate with QuickBooks. You can find out all the details about the webinar series at qbpowerhour.com. So without further ado, here's Nichole and Dan.
Welcome to another QB Power Hour. Some of you saw a little bit earlier some behind the scenes things. But today we're going to be talking about backing up your data in QuickBooks Desktop and online. And we have our guest Rewind with us to talk about some of the extra online things that you can do with backing up your data. So Nichole, you want to introduce yourself? Woman who needs no introduction.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nichole. I'm a CPA with an MBA in entrepreneurship, the owner of Long for Success. I've been a trainer for Intuit since 2007, author of several different books. You can check those out on Amazon, and love to have you join us all on that Facebook group. You can see the link right there where you can join us to continue the conversation after this session ends. And I'm always glad to have someone smarter than I, like Dan DeLong, to help with these webinars.
Yeah, although I don't know if you would say that today, but someone started the webinar a little early. But yeah, I'm the co-host, owner of Dan With. I worked at Intuit nearly 18 years, so have lots of horror stories about people who didn't back up their data. So we'll be talking about why you should be backing up your data in general, and then we'll be talking about some other things. And I co-host a workshop on Wednesdays, oddly enough, called Workshop Wednesdays. I'm the chief content creator at School of Bookkeeping and just signed up to do the technical editing for QBO for Dummies 7th edition. So little details about some upcoming Power Hour webinars. We'll be coming back to the niche nuances series. So next time we'll be having Megan Tarnow coming and joining us she's a really great resource for nonprofits. So we'll be revisiting nonprofit accounting, and I hope you join us for that. We'll be continuing with the QBO Advanced Feature Deep Dive with tasks and workflows. Nichole and I are going to be talking about that, and then we'll come back to the niche nuances again with real estate. Real estate has been a niche that a lot of people have a lot of questions about. So we'll have Geeta Faust joining us to talk about just one aspect of real estate, and she'll join us later for another aspect. But we'll be talking about real estate rentals on the 25th of May. Obviously, we cover a lot of things about QuickBooks, some tips on what's new, and marketing, pricing, and topics to really help you grow as accounting professionals. There's links there for the slides. All of the slides are available in handouts, because one thing accountants love is to print PDFs and make notes on them. Is that part of CPA education? Like, did you learn that in college, Nichole?
Well, contrary to what some people think, CPA actually sometimes stood for cut, paste, and arrange, or copy prior year's adjustments. So we love our paper and our spreadsheets and our Excel files, but honestly, CPA is couldn't pass again. It's none of those things.
Boy, you got all sorts of
anyway,
insider information there. So yeah, go ahead.
No, that's okay.
No, so we've got the recordings on YouTube, so you can watch prior webinars, as well as on our website, qbpowerhour.com, as well as the podcast. So today we're going to talk about why backing up and certain backup strategies. And then we'll talk about backup one word or backup two words, the difference between the two. Backing up some of the things that you can do backing up in desktop, some of the things that you can do backing up in online, and what it means to back up your data in QuickBooks Online. And then we'll talk about some of the online backup limitations. And then we have a guest, Nichole from Rewind, to give us a Rewind overview and demonstration of the application. So we'll start off with our first poll, which is just what version of QuickBooks are you using? Online, desktop, both, or maybe you're joining us from Intuit and you don't use either. We do have a few people registered actually from Intuit addresses. I did notice that the other day, Michelle.
As always, yes. Well, Dan, I think, talking about accountants and CPAs and bookkeepers and stuff, one of the things I think is inherent in our nature is because we're taking care of other people's data, we are super sensitive to backing up and then having a backup of our backup. I remember in the old days when we had those tape backups.
Oh, wow.
And you'd let it, yeah. Well, because, the discs were too many. It would take too many to back up. And so we had like a tape drive and stuff. But even with the discs, a lot of times, you'd have two backups and you would rotate them. So like you'd always have one from the day before and one from last night, and then you would rotate them and stuff. But a lot of times what people would do is they would just sit them on the counter. Like they'd sit them on top of the file cabinet or sit them on top of the desk or whatever. So in a fire or flood, you've got two backups. That's great, but they both got burned in the fire. You know what I mean? So it's important to get one off site. And that's where now more than ever, having these in the cloud and SaaS, I know you're going to talk more about that later, but that is huge because we are getting it off site for real protection of the data.
Right. Go ahead and share the results. So it looks like both is our common thread today, but followed closely by online. So and that segues really nicely, Michelle, into what I used to tell people when people would call in, like why backup and backup strategies. One of the original training, when I went through my original training, we were just talking about troubleshooting in general. Like step 2 is create a damage control plan, right? and that would be, not just, troubleshooting, but also in any aspect of life, have something in place in case the worst thing happens. And to your point where you were mentioning, backups being, tape backups, and that's redundant and that's fantastic. But yes, the backup is only as good as the disk it's on, right? And where it's actually physically located. So if you actually have a fire or a theft or something like that, and that backup is now gone, that disk is physically gone, or that disk gets damaged, that's as good as it's going to get with the backup. And the analogy that I used to use, or the Dan analogy, was that the dentist would say you floss the teeth you don't want to replace, right? Right. So that would be all of them for most people. Back up the data you don't want to re-enter. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. So, if you can say, I don't want to re-enter that data, that's the data that you should be backing up. Now, there's this, there's a backup, one word, and then there's a backup, two words, right? Like, so which is it? So there's actually, backup is a noun, right? That's the actual physical file or the result of that backup process. But backup, two words, is a verb, right? That's the act of backing up. So we'll be talking a little bit about the distinctions of, doing that, because if you say, well, I've got a backup, but it's not a file that's actually a backup, then there's a different way to actually restore that file. So that's what we wanted to kind of talk about. So in QuickBooks Windows, there are three major file types in use. So there's the QBW file, like if you in Windows, if you show the file extensions, sometimes you may not see that, or if you hover over the file and look at the properties, it'll say QBW. It's a QuickBooks working file, QuickBooks Windows file. Make up your own acronym for what QBW actually stands for. But that is the active company file. That's the active financial file. QBB is the QuickBooks backup. So when you actually do a backup in QuickBooks, that creates a QBB file. And it's an archive of the active file and some associated folders that are part of working with that QuickBooks or that QBW file. Then there's a copy of a file called a QBM, which is a portable company file. Don't know why M means portable, but I guess QBP was already taken, which it was. If you use QuickBooks Point of Sale, there already is a QBP file type already there, so they had to, I guess, use M instead. But it is a compressed file that's only the financial data. And I've given a link of all of the file types of QuickBooks windows, so from IIF to TLG to all the other ones that are associated with there. So you can access that and review that on your leisure time, right? Like, so we have so much free time. So in QuickBooks for Windows, you have the ability to schedule backups. And some people don't even realize that this option exists, but there's the ability to schedule. So when you go in to make a backup, you can make a backup right then and there, or you can set up some options and actually back up and schedule the backup. So some of the advantages of that is that you can automatically back up when you exit QuickBooks. So you can specify, save a backup every third time, that I close the file, or every time that I close the file, so that it will automatically back it up for you, so you don't have to remember to make that backup. So again, flossing the backup, saving all those teeth, right? And you can schedule a time when QuickBooks, when you're out of QuickBooks, right? So maybe overnight at the end of the day, you can have it run. And then there are some options to be able to store the number of backup files in that particular location. Now, some of the disadvantages of that is that the computer needs to be on, right? So if you schedule something at 1 a.m., the computer needs to know when 1 a.m. actually happens, and the file needs to be closed. So some people are horrible, raising my hand, about closing QuickBooks at the end of the day. You may just leave it open. It won't back it up if you don't close the company file. And there's a link as well to the Intuit articles about scheduling backup. So if you have the handouts, you'll be able to click on those and go there as well. Now, this part here is something that a lot of people didn't know existed, and most accountants don't know it existed because it's not available in accountant version, right? But your clients that are using QuickBooks with a subscription, actually, that's not true. It doesn't need to be in a subscription. That's actually the next slide. But the automatic data recovery is running for Pro, Premier, Enterprise, anything that's non-accountant edition. And you might ask, well, why does that not exist for my accountant edition? Well, if you're managing 50 files, your computer would be entirely slow because it would constantly be copying the data all the time, right? So it automatically is running. There's 12 and 24-hour backups that are automatically made. The file type here is an ADR, which is automatic data recovery. So you can, worst case scenario is if you don't have a backup, you can always go wherever the company file is physically located. There's going to be a folder there. You see it at the top called QuickBooks Auto Data Recovery, and then go into that file and restore that file. If it was just something that was, last night, you need to put it back, you can do that. And there's a link there to be able to do that. And then Intuit Data Protect. I know it's a sore subject to some people. I supported Intuit Data Protect when it first came out and heard all of the horror stories and all of the not liking it because it did initially it slowed down computers and things like that, but it's actually gotten a lot better. But it is an Intuit Data Protect is a service that Intuit offers with its subscription desktop clients. So anything with Plus, we're talking about Pro Plus or Premier Plus, just to confuse people against the QBO Plus, not with QBO Plus, but with Pro Plus or Pro Premier Plus. There we go, and Enterprise. So that there's a service subscription already included with those subscriptions. If you subscribe to the support offerings that Intuit offers, Intuit Data Protect is part of that. But it's there's a full PC option, and some people didn't even realize that the file can be open when it's backing up the data, and it actually keeps 45 versions of the file, and it's off-site, right? So to Michelle's point, where you don't necessarily want to back up, and every time that you do back up local on the same computer, you get that warning message from QuickBooks that says, hey, don't do this on the local drive, or don't do this on the hard drive, because again, that's that same process, or the same option of, hey, if this drive goes bad, then you don't have a backup either. It does backup attachments. So if you are using attachments, Intuit Data Protect will automatically back up those attachments. And you can also back up other things other than QuickBooks using the Intuit Data Protect. So if you use something like Carbonite, or other backup services, and it's actually on the back end, it's actually Semantic that's doing it. It's not Intuit that's saving your data. They partner with Semantic, so that's actually where it's being stored online. And you get email alerts when the backup is, and you can specify whether it's successful or unsuccessful, which is really what you want to know, is when your backup is unsuccessful. And the cons are it is slow. It's never been accused of being a fast process. However, if you do need to restore last week's backup, that is infinitely faster than entering all that data. And it's got a history of being unreliable. So sometimes those email alerts don't come in, or it just doesn't back up, and it doesn't tell you why. It just says didn't happen. Right. So let's talk about apps. Nichole was mentioning, I think earlier, that we have a lot of apps. So on average, how many apps do you have connected to your clients in QBO? So yeah, I mean, I have a lot of horror stories of people who did not have a backup, or they lost their backup, or the backup is corrupt, because you don't know how good a backup is until it's actually restored. So it's always good to have a backup of the backup, and have multiple a backup strategy or a backup regimen that you have. And if you have if you're using like the cloud hosting with QuickBooks, you can also they could also be backing up your data, but they may be backing up the QBW and not actually making a backup file. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind as what they're actually backing up. Are they just making a copy of the company or all of the files? Because most of those online backup services, that's what they do, is copy whatever file you tell it to back up.
And Dan, did you mention, or are you going to mention, don't just do the auto backups, but periodically do a manual backup on desktop so that you clear the TLG file?
Right. That's a good important step. I don't think I mentioned that. There's an associated file called a TLG file in QuickBooks Desktop that is a record of every transaction. So the TLG stands for transaction log file. So that is a record of every transaction that was made since the last backup, right? So if your backup regimen is just copying the QBW file, that TLG file will grow exponentially, because until you actually do the file make a backup option, that TLG file will continue to grow. Now, the purpose of that is to be able to, if you had to send the data file into it for their data services and reconstruct the data, they'll have the TLG file, which is the record of every transaction, and the last backup which you made, right? So they'll be able to put Humpty Dumpty back together again with those two different files. But it doesn't get purged unless you actually do a backup. So good point there. So it looks like 1 to 2 is our main option for the number of apps that are used today. So let's talk a little bit about backing up in QuickBooks Online. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about redundant live backups and then restore points. So this was a great analogy that Brad Smith used when he was talking to us one day. He was talking about data in the cloud, right? When we're talking about QuickBooks Online, obviously everything is stored in the cloud. And the true reality is there is no cloud. It's just someone else's computer, right? So they had, at that point, they had 2 different data centers, and he compared that to 2 margarita blenders. Like if you're having a party, right, and you only have one blender, and that blender goes down, the party's over, right? And we've all been aware of a time when QuickBooks Online went down. It's much better now than it was in the past, but what was happening is that they had one margarita blender. So they ended up building 2 data centers so that they could have both margarita blenders running at the same time. So if something happened to one data center, the other party kept going because the other margarita blender was running. So when you save a transaction, so on this slide here, when you save a transaction in QuickBooks Online, regardless of wherever that is happening, you may be at one blender or another at that particular moment, it's going to be saved in both places. So if anything were to happen with your cloud, wherever that happened to be, it would you'd still be able to access your data. So historically and typically you have less data issues with QuickBooks Online because of this redundant backup of your data. And this is something that Intuit does on your behalf, right? So that's part of the cloud service itself. You don't have to, make a backup of QuickBooks, but what it's doing is it's saving and redundantly backing up your live data, right? So, and we'll talk about the challenges of that because in Online Advanced, there is a backup company, because one thing that you don't have with that redundant live backup is a restore point to be able to fall back on. So some of the examples of, if I imported a list or I imported the wrong thing to the wrong client, like Nichole was saying, if I put it in, completely wiped out a company by importing into QuickBooks, that live data being backed up redundantly does me no good because I don't have anything to fall back on. So in QuickBooks Online Advanced, there is a backup company option. But one of the things that you want to keep in mind is you have to opt into it. So there is a subscription for, what was ChronoBooks is now, QuickBooks Online Advanced Backup and Restore. So, but you get a free subscription in QuickBooks Online Advanced and QuickBooks Online Advanced only, but you have to opt into that. And I have a lot of clients or people that use QBO Advanced that haven't done that. Like they haven't turned on the backup company option. So it's under the tool menu or the gear and the tool menu. You have to opt in to start the backup process. But it does give you a restore point so that if you do have the worst case scenario of something happening to the live data, you can fall back on that option.
And Dan, can you help me remember? I know we had that Power Hour with Intuit employees, David, and some of the others talking about the features of Advanced that we accounting professionals are going to be getting in our QBOA Your Books. Dan, do you remember? It seems I don't think we get that backup feature. Do you remember in QBOA Your Books?
Yeah, originally that was like the next phase of the Online Advanced features. So user setup and online backup and restore in QBOA are coming, but I went into my QBOA and saw this option. So maybe some companies are getting it faster than others, but that it was supposed to be slated for the next wave of QBOA advanced features. QBO advanced features in QBOA in the Your Books. Yeah.
So here's a challenging question for you, Dan. So in QBO Advanced, so somebody is
Mhm.
using Advanced and their inventory is very messed up. Could they use the backup option to re-import the entire file without the inactive inventory items? So I don't
Um,
think you could,
yeah,
because you can't reconvert. You can't
right.
re-import.
Yeah, I mean the backup and restore really only gives you a snapshot at that particular moment. Now, maybe Nichole at Rewind might give us a might be able to speak to this scenario with some of the things that Rewind does, but that's all that the online backup does in QuickBooks Online Advanced is give you that restore point. So yeah, a great use case for that is what Michelle was saying earlier, that I overwrote, I imported into QuickBooks and wiped out my client's data with somebody else's data, right? So I need to go back to that particular moment in time, and they'll be able to roll that back. I know another story of of an accountant who inadvertently put their client data into their QBOA, right? And that's a whole nother meaning of a mess to unravel. And so, rolling back to that prior moment in time, I used to, explain it, not complain it, but explain it that it was just like taking a picture, right? And if you just wanted to look at that picture again, the way things were at that particular time, you could do that with your restore points. But it's if you wanted to make a change, as long as it's available to re-import, you can make your change in desktop, right? And wipe out the items or make them inactive. But again, yeah, that's probably an offline scenario. So what about other versions, right? Like Simple Start and Essentials and Plus, right? So why are they left out in the cold, right? So what do you do about those when you need a backup service because you can't use the QBO, can't put the Simple Start customer into Advanced just to get them back up? Well, that's where we have someone like Rewind come in. So I'm going to stop sharing and then let Nichole take over.
Hey everyone. Okay, so let me just share my screen. Mm-hmm. Here we go. Go ahead and play our presentation here. So thank you very much for joining and being interested in learning more about Rewind and our backup offering. I'm going to take you a little bit through about who Rewind is as a company, what we do, why we back up QBO, the other apps that we back up, and then I'll take you through a demonstration of how to actually restore an item or what Rewind looks like, how we hold all of your data in our vault. So we are Rewind, the leading backup service for SaaS tools like QuickBooks Online, but also Trello, Shopify, BigCommerce, and GitHub. We've been in the backups game now since 2015, and we serve over 80,000 customers across all of these app offerings. And this is just the beginning. So if there's a SaaS app that you see here that we don't currently back up, stay tuned for more because we are launching more platforms throughout the year. A little bit more about who we are as an organization. We're based out of Ottawa, the capital of Canada. We currently have 75 employees, and actually this slide's out of date. We've got more employees than what we have listed here, and we're growing quite quickly. We average 5-star ratings across all of our offerings with over 1,000 different reviews in our marketplaces, and we're rapidly expanding our backup service to more SaaS tools. Our mission's pretty simple. We want to back up and protect all of the cloud data for small, medium, and large businesses. And why that's important to us is because we recognize that SaaS apps are a growing market. Lots of different companies, bookkeepers, CPA firms of all sizes are using SaaS tools, different apps to continue expanding their offering and backing up some of their most important data. We see here that the average size of the company, as the company grows its employee size, the more apps that they use. And the more they spend on them as well, too. We know that the average mid-sized CPA firm can spend an upwards of $50,000 to $60,000 on their tech stack annually. So this signals to us that apps are pretty important. They're filling gaps, they're expanding the offering of what the platform that you're using, but something that they're not doing is backing up your data on an account level. So it's important to say that yes, these platforms are backed up. They back up their servers, they back up your account, but you don't have access to that backup. It would take a very unlikely scenario like their data servers being completely wiped out or a massive data breach for them to actually back up your account. It needs to be their fault that that happens. The more likely scenario is that an error occurs within your account at an account level. And it would be very difficult for these platforms to go in and find that one line of data. It's like identifying a needle in a field of haystacks for them. So a tool like Rewind really gives you the controlled data recovery to allow you to go into your account and restore an individual item or your entire file to a particular point in time. And these are some of the likely scenarios that we see SaaS users requiring data recovery using different third-party apps, malicious attacks, importing CSV files, and the overwhelming amount of data error. It just comes down to human error, just accidentally or getting click happy, as we mentioned earlier, is likely the cause of why you would need to use a backup.
Question for you, Nichole. So, we'll launch the second, third poll there while we're talking about that. So you had that question there. Where'd it go now? Since you started sharing, my screen readjusted. There you go. All right. So, what is your number one concern when it comes to data security? So, because this is kind of like an open-ended question, just go ahead and put that in the chat, because Zoom doesn't give us an opportunity to put in what those concerns might actually be. But if you have, when you're thinking about a concern like that, go ahead and enter that into the chat. And Nichole, one of the questions, and this might be too techy, but we always have, there's always one in the crowd. What actual file does Rewind make, right? Does it actually make a file? Because again, we're talking about PDFs and printing out PDFs, and who our audience is. They want to print out something. They want to have something to hold. What is the file type? Is it something that they can download and have locally, or is everything only on your servers and it's part of the service of what Rewind offers?
Great question. So it's not something that you can physically print and hold. It is in Rewind's cloud within your vault. So I will jump into a demonstration to show you what that exactly looks like. But is it something that you can export and physically keep on hand? It's not. It's in the cloud. And it's external from your platform, which is another great backup strategy, to have your data external from the actual platform. So in this scenario, for example, that QuickBooks does have a data breach or an outage, and your backup is within QuickBooks, your backup is down alongside that. Rewind's an external backup from that solution.
Got it. Okay. So go ahead, Michelle, you were going to say.
Well, I was just going to say earlier, we went live a few minutes early, but I don't think everybody did hear the story about where an accounting professional had messed up. And I actually had this gentleman call me. This was a grown man who really was on the verge of breaking down. Like, he was fighting back tears, because what he had done, he had attended our sessions and he had learned, how to restore a file and how to convert from desktop to online and all this. And, we always tell people, when you're converting from desktop to online, it asks which company do you want to put the data into. And you have to be very, very careful, or you will overwrite whatever data is there. Well, he got click happy and had several companies with a similar name, like Summit County Automotive, Summit County Beauty Shop, Summit County something else. Well, he got in a hurry and got click happy and hit the wrong Summit County, wiped out an existing client's accounting information, like all their history. And it was a fairly large client. There was already all these threats, lawsuits and everything. And I mean, he literally was in tears. What can I do? What can we do? And that's where paying a few dollars for Rewind can save your but I mean, it really can save you. And I saw several people putting that into the comments, corruption of data or client data errors. What about accounting errors or human errors? Because a lot of times it is that human mistake that's going to get us. And so having that backup is such good insurance for us. Whenever you're doing things, it's just a nice precaution to have that there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they and someone asked a question here: has Rewind or Intuit ever been attacked? I mean, yes. I mean, from the Intuit perspective, attacks are happening all the time. There's people trying to get it. I mean, you consider the kind of data that's being stored inside of company data inside of QuickBooks. There are all sorts of malicious people out there wanting to get their hands on that data, whether that's social security numbers, your EIN, all the personally identifiable information that's actually in there, credit card numbers, those things are in there. And the only thing that's stopping them from getting there is your password, right? So that's why, as it's a pain, PETA, to be able to reset your password or get that code when you log in from an unrecognized computer. That is really the only thing that's stopping someone from accessing that data, or at least getting access to some of that data. Once you're in there, a lot of the data is actually obfuscated and encrypted on top of that. So but has from Rewind's perspective, Nichole, has that ever occurred?
It has not occurred. We have not received or been attacked, and I'm not putting that out there as a challenge either. I think if you walk away from one thing from this session is to go back and make sure that you've got strong passwords, and that if you do share client access as well, if your clients are in your files, making sure that they're practicing strong password security as well too. Because ultimately we are liable if data gets breached, to report that as well too.
Right. So the pain of, I've got to create an Intuit login even for my client's desktop files. That is one of the ways that data is going to be protected by someone. If somebody picks up that file and finds a way to get into the file, they won't be able to access the file if they've not been given user permissions to be able to do that.
Well, and Dan, one of the things I think that's awesome is because Intuit knows the sensitivity of the data and everything, they're always ahead of the game when it comes to these hackers and security. QuickBooks and Intuit were one of the first companies to start requiring that two-factor authorization, like right when even the banks were just starting to do it. And I know everybody initially was complaining, but Intuit is keeping us ahead of the game and ahead of the hackers. And Intuit ensures that the third-party apps like Rewind comply with those security measures to protect that data. So it's actually safer in the cloud than it is on your own hard drive.
Which leads me perfectly to this slide here. So we mentioned a little bit in the past about how we were using these different backup methods, which were all physical copies, and we were protecting these physical copies of backup. That served us very well in the past, but it's not going to serve us as we continue shifting to the cloud. So we need different tools to help us adapt. And that's where a tool like Rewind comes in. So Rewind automatically backs up your QuickBooks Online file, and it allows you to restore data, either your entire file or a specific item within your file to a point in time where it was snapshotted by Rewind. So I'm just going to stop screen sharing this for just a moment and pop up the Intuit App Store here. So I want to take you quickly through what Rewind looks like. And just to kick off this introduction, you can find us in the Intuit App Store. So we are regularly a trending app within their marketplace. We've got great reviews. So you can see for Intuit specifically, for QuickBooks, we've got 188 different reviews here. And I encourage you to read them because they're all fantastic. We've got some product shots and a little demonstration video here if you want to dive in. But let's see what Rewind actually looks like. So we're going to sign in here, and we also have two-factor authentication as well. In terms of just encrypting our data, it's encrypted through our servers as well at rest as well as in transit. So here
I noticed there that you can use your Intuit login,
yes,
right? So you don't have to use a separate login for Rewind. You can, but you can also utilize your Intuit login as well. So when you're in the company, you just click on that, and you're in the same you're using the same login, so you don't have to use that as a separate login if you don't want to.
So this popped me into my Shopify account, which is currently not backed up. So that's not great for my demo account, but I'll show you just over, let me just move this Zoom panel out of the way. I'll show you just by how you would navigate over to your QuickBooks Online file. So we've got this little profile icon, and if you manage or are part of multiple organizations, you can select which organization you want to be a part of here. So I'm going to pop into my QuickBooks Online file. If you manage multiple client files, you'll see them all here, a part of your dropdown, but this popped me into my demo file. In my demo file here, these are all of the individual items within my QuickBooks Online file. So you can see it's quite a long list. We have them listed by name, by action type, as well as the last time that they were updated. So this is an individual item. If you wanted to go in and recover just an invoice in a client file, you would click the item that you want to restore. On the left-hand side, you can see the live version. On the right-hand side, you would click the version history here. Or you can filter if you know exactly when it was, and restore to that particular version. So this is going to restore just this item within your QuickBook file to that selected date or to that selected time. And that's great.
When I was looking at Rewind, that was kind of what stood out, heads and tails above the other options that are out there, is the ability to be able to restore that one transaction. You have someone who deleted a transaction. Well, you have, as an accountant, you have the voided deleted transaction report, which is great. But if you don't have any way to, enter or restore that one transaction of if it's a year-end journal entry that's adjusting and there's 42 line items on it, or they have really long invoices with a lot of detail, you gotta start from scratch. I mean, you have the audit history to be able to bring that back to life, but you got to enter it back in. There is no Lazarus resurrecting from the dead, but this is the option to be able to do that.
Yeah, and you're totally right. This is the feature that really sells Rewind to our customer base. It's unlikely. Well, the circumstance does happen when you will have to completely restore the file. But what most likely happens is you need to restore just individual items, and your backup is really only as good as your restore. So it's great to have all of these backups, but when a situation arises and it is the critical, I am in crisis situation, the last thing you want to be doing is trying to manually pick through an API how-to sheet, uploading different CSV files. Rewind gives you the opportunity just to go in and restore it in a click.
How frequently, like if I made a change to a transaction, how quickly is it updated and backed up here?
We do timestamps, so your file is backed up at the same time every day. But if you were in a client file and you were making a lot of changes and you're aware that I'm making big changes here and I'm pretty far away from my backup, you can also click the Backup Now feature, and this will take as many backup stamps within the QBO file as you require, but your automated backup happens every day at the same time.
Got it. So if you are making a lot of changes, you could go in, force a backup moment at that point. Otherwise, it would just be the state of that transaction. If you needed to do one or two transactions, it would be the state of that transaction the last time it was backed up, which would be, in this case, it would be the last day, right?
Exactly.
Well, and doing those manual backups are great because a lot of times, let's say you are starting a new company and you are importing the lists and all the accounts and the names and the items, and then you want to import the transactions. It is nice, like, to import all the sales and invoice transactions, run a backup, import all the expenses, run a backup. So if something goes wrong, you don't have to roll back to the beginning. You can just roll back to that state. So it is nice being able to do those manual backups at each step as you go through that process.
And having this individual control over these specific transaction items is definitely something that people love. But
Yeah.
of course, sometimes you have to restore the entire file, and that's where the advanced restore feature comes in. So this is going to restore your entire QuickBooks Online file, all of those individual items that you see in the items tab, to a specific point in time. It's the same setup. You would select the date you want to restore the file to, and then restore the entire file to that specific point in time. So those are the two ways that you would restore items from your backup. But we also have a feature here called copy. Copy was a pretty popular feature request from our customer base. It allows you to copy a QBO file into another QBO file, or the source and destination file here. Lots of different use cases that cropped up when we launched this, but a popular one is to use this as a sandbox environment or to test different solutions. So we talked about trying different third-party apps, and we've got a laundry list of horror stories of different apps mistakes that have happened out there. You could copy the file, test the third-party app in the copy file, because copying does not change your source file. There's some caveats here, though, that I'd love to call out in all transparency. It does take a little bit of preparation. So if you really want that copy to go well, there's a little bit of work that should be done in advance. We have here this pre-copy checklist. This is really just making sure that your source file is clean. So if you know that there's a bunch of duplicates, if you want to finalize your payroll, if you want to clear up or reconcile any accounts, it's good practice just to go into your source file, take care of that first. Copy the source file, make sure that the destination has all of its pre-checks in place, that the settings are all correct, and then fire off your copy. That will just ensure that the data that you copy into your destination file is as clean as possible.
Yeah, this was where I really looked into Rewind, was this feature when it was in the beta testing, because if you wanted to go from QBO to QBO, a company file, it was a pain, to bring it down, bring it down to desktop, and then use that to go into QuickBooks Online. And good luck if something didn't transfer, from one platform to another. To be able to do that, right from online to online. And it was a great experience from my perspective, even in beta. The support folks were real friendly, because you guys are Canadian. But I mean, being able to, you get a list of transactions and what was skipped and what was successful, and it provides you a link back to the transaction, so that you can see what actually didn't come over, and make your figure out what the problem was if it didn't come over. So I mean, it was a great service. Now, again, caveat, there are limitations from the API perspective, right? I mean, you have to play by the same rules as all the other apps that are out there. So payroll is one of those things that we want to kind of talk about, even in the backup versus the copy, right?
Yeah, great call out. Michelle, I'll pass it to you.
Well, no, that you're just getting ready to talk about what I was going to ask. So go right ahead. Thank you.
So yeah, great call out on the API. So I just wanted to highlight here that Rewind backs up quite a bit of things. Here's a long list of all the things that we do back up. And there are other things that we back up and restore as well that is not automatically available, but our support team can do for you manually. And then there's just a call out here that there is a bit of a restriction with regards to the API and Intuit side. So there are certain pieces of information that are deemed complex or very sensitive that Intuit does not allow access to through the API. Some of those things are listed here in this long list. And for those reasons, we don't back up or restore that. So that's an important thing to keep in mind when working with a solution like this.
Okay, I have a question because I don't see it. But yes, this is one of the things that I was wondering about. What about the attachments? Because so many of our people now are using attachments to transactions and other things. Are those backed up and restored, or backed up and copied?
Yes. Actually, I don't know about copy. I'd have to verify for copy, but they are backed up and they can be restored. There's another list for copy here within our support center that goes over the things that is copied over, but I'd have to verify if attachments qualify for copy.
So does it maintain that link to the transaction too? Like
It
it doesn't.
does.
Wow, that's great, because that's always a big one, is people don't want to lose the attached backups of those receipts. So that's awesome.
A big question that I want to get answered, and it's been asked over and over again: if you're using QBO Advanced and you have the backup feature activated there, can you add on Rewind to that company as well, or do they don't play well together, or how does that
Rewind
work?
backs up QBO Advanced as well too. So if you wanted to have Rewind as well as the feature through QuickBooks, we back up that plan as well too.
All right.
So I'll just finish off this demo real quick with just a quick overview of the vault. So you've seen the vault. This is our encrypted vault where all of your data is secure. Just to highlight this panel, so if there are any other platforms that are important to you, you can quickly add them to your vault here. And that's really a quick demo. If you need support, we've got embedded support. We've got an incredible support team. So as Dan mentioned, the support team does a lot of amazing customer service. If you read our reviews, they're going to be about how awesome our support team is. So if there was an instance where you did need additional help, the support team is there to give you a hand with that. And I guess just to round out the last little bit of my presentation here is our pricing plans. So Rewind offers 3 different pricing plans. We have an individual file. So if you're just an individual contributor, you only manage one file. There's a single file plan. The most popular is our Accounting Pros plan, which is for people who manage more than 2 files. And what has quickly usurped the Accounting Pros plan is our Custom Enterprise. So if you do manage more than 25 client files, you qualify for a volume-based discount. And the price drops for that as well too. So just wanted to call out our pricing here, and I'll finish it off with, I guess this is supposed to be a poll question.
All right. So yeah, if you are interested in learning more about Rewind, of course, you can go to our landing page and launch right to Rewind from there. That helps us, here at the Power Hour, because we put this on for free for you. So any help that you can help us continue, you can launch it from there, and they'll be able to know that you came to them from through the Power Hour. So that'd be really helpful. Also, they can reach out to you as well from your answer here. Michelle.
Sorry, Dan. So we got a couple questions on payroll, and as always, like myself, people are confused on exactly how payroll. So one person says, so payroll isn't backed up or copied. I'm confused. But then somebody else says, well, wait a minute, what's the workaround? And I was under the impression that it comes over as checks instead of paychecks. So can you please clarify what happens with payroll in a backup and in a restore?
So payroll is not backed up. If there's maybe fringe cases or use cases here that I'm not appropriately covering, I will dive into them once I stop sharing my screen or once the poll is over. But payroll is not included in the backup. So if there are maybe elements within the payroll that are associated to, if there are elements that are within payroll that are associated to the backup, but in general, payroll is not backed up and it cannot be restored.
Gotcha. And then we're talking about QBO payroll, right? If they're using something like Intuit Online Payroll for accountants and you're sending that in as checks, those are not paychecks to the data, so they'll get backed up through this service because they are specific transactions that aren't payroll transactions. If you're using Gusto, they come in as journal entries, or if you use some outside payroll service, there's no way that the backup would not back that up because they're not payroll type transactions, right, Nichole?
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Did we have any other questions there, Michelle? I thought we had a few that we wanted to answer live.
Yes, we do. Okay, so here's a question. I was just getting ready to type in the answer. Somebody erased several months of bank reconciliations. Does QBOA or Rewind help with recovering them? And I don't know how you erase bank reconciliations in QuickBooks Online. I know you can undo a bank reconciliation. But is that something piecemeal that you would be able to restore? Is the reconciliation status of transactions?
Good question. Just out of curiosity, Dan, is the poll over? I'm just wondering if you're able to close
you can, yeah, you can move on to the next page because you're purple.
Yeah,
because
I know. I've got this massive screen and it's just like drowning me out. Okay, so I'll leave it here. I'll drop in the chat a link to the different scenarios where we might not back it up, but our support team has access to the backup. So this is through our R&D team on the back end, where if, for example, bank reconciliation is one of those things, the support team can manually go in, but it's not something that you, the end user, would have control over yourself. So if there are any other questions outside of what we've provided here, drop them in the chat and I'll pick them up post webinar.
Can you set a time for the backup, or is that times that you can specify, or is it's just hard coded when it's going to be backed up?
Exactly, hard coded. So it's the same time every day. I believe it's based on the data center that your data is being backed up to, but it's usually around 12 a.m. And it happens every day at the same time.
Got it. All righty, I'm just looking through some of the questions here. Can you choose the various different things about the data to restore, or is it one transaction or list element, or is it can you choose like a customer list? Like if you say I wanted the customer list restored yesterday, but everything else to be the same, is that possible, or is it one transaction? Or
we do back up customers as well too, but I think it might be a single customer that would be backed up at a time, or an updated customer profile would be backed up one at a time.
Gotcha. So that's a good question for support. That's what I'm hearing.
So Colleen would like to know, for QuickBooks payments, is there a way to import those without the sensitive data? So like with QuickBooks payments, when somebody says, I want to pay online and I want to save my payment information so that next time I don't have to re-enter my bank account or my credit card information, how does that work in a backup and restore?
Backups, so payments are included in the backup, but maybe I'm not understanding what the question is, sorry.
Well, okay, so if it would back up that information, does it also back up and restore the sensitive financial information, like they put in their credit card number or their bank account number to save for payment for in the future? A lot of times, because it's a credit card number and stuff, they won't allow that to be backed up.
Yeah, I don't think that data is included in the backup. It would probably be record of the payment and not the actual sensitive data associated to the end user. But the record of payment would be included in the backup and not the credit card data, for example.
Right. That's what I thought.
And some of the use cases, especially like if you're using a copy, if you're copying, like if you're actually transitioning the data from one subscription to another, you have to add it to the source file, and then you want to add it to the new subscription. Once you're done with the copy and everything looks good, and you don't need it on the source file, how long are you able to access those backups, or would you be able to reactivate it if need be and still have access to those backups?
Oh, that's a really good question. So if I understand it correctly, I'll answer this in two parts. So we keep the data for one calendar year, 365 days, but maybe are you referring to if the source data is no longer available and you wanted to recall that? I think that's 30 days that you have to recall the deleted source data.
Okay. And as soon as you cancel that
Exactly.
first subscription, it's still there for 30 days. Okay, gotcha. That was a question someone asked. All right, Nichole, did you see any others?
I do. It's another hard one. Okay,
No.
so let's say somebody has QBO Advanced file they want to restore to desktop, copy the file except for inventory, and then export into a new QBO file. Basically, it sounds like they have a QBO file that they want to get rid of all the inventory. So they're looking for some kind of workaround to start a new QBO company with no inventory.
So I think that if I understand this correctly, this is a question of copying from QBD to QBO in some way.
Well, they're in QBO already.
Yeah.
So they're trying to get rid of their inventory, basically.
I think the biggest challenge, though, with that in that scenario is if the inventory items were used, then you won't be able to delete them, right? I mean, that's the biggest challenge in general, because those items have been used. And I think the other caveat to that is when you can't delete an item in QuickBooks Online anyway. It just inactivates them, and it's still there on the list. You can reactivate it if you want to. Now you can delete an item if it's not been used in desktop, and I think that's maybe what they're alluding to. Is like, if I bring it down to desktop, can I get rid of it and then bring it up? But that's really outside of Rewind,
right? Yeah,
scope.
Yeah.
That's more of a
post that one on the
scenario.
Facebook group, and people can help you with ideas.
Yeah. You saved Nichole from answering that one.
Yeah, my goodness. Those are tough questions. I'm definitely going to defer to our support agents for most of those tough ones.
And I think there was a little like a spacing issue on the pricing. So if it's just one company file, it's $19. Is that what it
Exactly.
was? Because it was like 1 and then 9.
Oh, so it's $19 for a single file. Which we really see is like a CFO controlling a single file, but the plan that most of our accounting professionals land on is the accounting pros. If you're between 2 to 24 files, and anything 25 and above, it's a bulk discount pricing.
Right. And you still have that. I mean, maybe I'm stepping on toes, but do you still have that once you're an accounting pro, you get one for free?
Good question. I haven't seen this in a long time, so this might be like a legacy. If it exists, then for sure. I would say talk to our sales team.
Don't tell them that Dan told you that it was free.
They have access to all of those discounts. So if it's still active, then it absolutely applies.
Gotcha. When I originally started, as an accounting pro with Rewind, that was the option. It may not be the option now, but don't quote me. As of today, the 13th of April, 2021, may not be the case today, but once you got set up, you could activate one for yourself, which the idea was that you back up your own books.
Bonnie just posted in the chat that she signed up this year and my accountant books are backed up free.
Yeah.
But Sandy said, I got nothing free. So I'm not sure. I do know, though, Nichole, a lot of people have expressed their appreciation at having Rewind come on to learn more about this. And a lot of people sound very excited about it. We had some people who said they're already using it and they absolutely love it. So I think we're very appreciative that you've come on and shared all this with us today.
Oh, the pleasure's mine. I've heard so much about the QB Power Hour in my time at Rewind. I know it's really valuable among the community members. So it's my pleasure to be here and speak with you all.
Well, thank you for joining us, Nichole and Michelle. It's always great to see you. And hopefully you join us in a couple weeks when we talk about niche nuances with nonprofits who need to back up their data too.
Yes.
So we'll see you next time on the Power Hour.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. Thanks, Nichole.
We hope you enjoyed listening to the QB Power Hour podcast. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in our Facebook group. You can find those resources and much more at qbpowerhour.com.